On February 20th, 2026, Saturn and Neptune will conjunct at 0 degrees of Aries. These planets haven't met up since 1989, and it's especially significant that their conjunction is occurring at 0 degrees of Aries, the very start, the exact beginning of the zodiac. This is a time that's brand new, and it holds tremendous potential. I spoke with my friend and fellow astrologer Corin about this exciting and important transit. We had a great talk and we covered a lot of ground. This conjunction is exact on February 20th, but we'll be working with Saturn and Neptune together in Aries throughout the year. So let's get started.
I feel like this is easily the most significant transit of the year and maybe one of the most important transits of the decade. So I'm excited to be talking about it with you. We've talked about a lot of astrology over the years, but this is a big transit. So while it's exact in February, Saturn and Neptune will be co-present in Aries all year. Saturn and Neptune they were briefly in Aries in 2025 from May through September. And really, Saturn and Neptune are and have been within a 15-degree orb of each other from March of 24 through 2027.
Wow.
So February 20th of 2026, we have the conjunction of Saturn-Neptune, and that new cycle sort of officially begins. And I feel like this is especially important because it happens to be at the 0 degree point of Aries. You know, we have the very, very beginning of the zodiac here, these two planets meeting up for the first time since 1989 at the 0 degree point of the zodiac, the very, very first degree there. And it's just been interesting the way they've been dancing with being co-present in Pisces. And then we did have a little taste of it in the summer of 25. So yeah, I feel like it's sort of the end of this dreamy sort of watery cycle, for better or worse, whatever was happening in Pisces, and sort of the beginning of potentially a more reality-based chapter, something very new.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think 1989 can be very instructive in context when they came together, when Saturn and Neptune came together in 1989, I believe it was in Capricorn. We saw the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Soviet Union, its structure changed, communism, quote unquote, went away, even though perhaps it didn't go totally away. But we saw the collapse of structures. Now we have the two planets coming together in Aries, which is a Mars ruled sign and a sign of action. So what does the dissolution of 1989, how might that look in a different time? And Saturn ruling structures and Neptune being a planet of dissolving structures and dissolution in general, in things that are ambient and not quite well defined. How do you bring those two energies? How do those two energies come together? And that's kind of the puzzle of Saturn-Neptune, right? That their co-presence presents just a basic question of how does something that's almost skeletal in nature, structures, bones, the bones of a building, the bones of a body, the bones of an idea, Saturn rules all of those things. How does it meet up with Neptune, which wants to take apart and sort of kind of vaporize? And yeah, it's been interesting to think about that and how it might play out in our charts and how it might play out collectively as well.
And it strikes me that the 0 degree point, how brand new it really is right there, you know, and I think for that reason, wherever this focus is for people or in the collective, it will hold our attention a lot. You know, it'll really captivate us and sort of capture us and pull our focus there, you know, because of sort of the importance of the conjunction and the rarity of it and the powerfulness of it. And then also because it's so brand new at that 0 degree point. There are so many different potentials for it. So it feels like we have sort of that dreaminess of Neptune and then the limit of Saturn. So sort of there's the potential anyway, I feel like, for this to sort of take our highest hopes and dreams and make them possible or tangible in some kind of way. however it manifests for individuals or in the collective, it feels like, definitely sort of paradigm shifting potential because of that 0 degree point. But it's like Saturn potentially could sort of make the imagining of Neptune possible, like show Neptune the way for that imagining to become sort of tangible, for visions to become concrete. But I think that because it's at Aries, because it's at that 0 degree point, it's something that was beyond possible before, like maybe beyond what we could have even imagined for ourselves potentially before this time. There's something about this that before we cross over that Aries threshold, which we sort of did have a little taste of in 2025, I'm not sure that we can really understand it.
Yeah, I think it's probably quite hard to see how it will unfold even 2 months before it does possibly be so dramatic and something that we're not quite able to quite see just yet, but will unfold given the other astrological events of the spring quickly and make itself known quickly. And as you mentioned, that 0 degrees Aries point is it's a powerful point on the zodiac. It has a lot of significance, and I think it'll unfurl rather in a way that can't be ignored. It's not something that will develop and evolve. I mean, of course, every transit evolves over time, and the co-presence of Saturn and Neptune, as you pointed out, we've had a taste of it last summer, and they will be co-present for a while. So there will be evolution in our lives and on the global stage, but I think it will reveal itself in a very significant event. Yeah, in a dramatic way. As Aries might. Aries is the planet, the sign of, it's a fire starter. It's a pioneering sign. It's very active. It's cardinal fire. It's not easily ignored or ignored at all. It's things we can't ignore. What this means for people, the signals will come quick and fast, I think, in the spring.
Yeah. They'll both be, Saturn will enter Aries on February 13th, February 14th. Neptune will already be there. That's up for the conjunction by the 20th. But they're really co-present off and on throughout the year, certainly through the winter and spring here, in my mind. People are working with this conjunction, especially if you have an important planet or point, and we'll talk about that later as we go. But I agree also, especially with an outer planet. When an outer planet changes signs, that we usually feel that. There's usually a moment around that. There's usually something happening. And then I just think the way they're sort of hanging out together and how close they stay for a while, it also sort of is a signature that stays active, while they're within 10 degrees of orb anyway, I would say. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say within 10 is a good, or 8 to 10, perhaps. This is a good point to perhaps reflect on Neptune and Pisces, which we've had in our lives since 2011 or so. So Neptune has been in Pisces, the sign that it rules, for quite a long time. Neptune, in its own sign, is very dreamy, perhaps very full of imagination. We also had a pandemic during Neptune and Pisces, which was a fundamentally ambient disease that swept the world. Many things happened, of course, in the last 14 years or so. But also, when I think of Neptune and Pisces on a personal level, I think of imagination, creativity, spirituality, but also a point of blindness. Like Neptune can come with blind spots. So I'd expect that Neptune moving into Aries from Pisces, from dreamy Pisces into action-oriented Aries, will reveal perhaps a blind spot. I'm just speaking about my own chart, a blind spot perhaps that I have not seen for a while, or something that was right in front of me that I just didn't notice, and might reveal itself as Neptune crosses that threshold into Aries.
Yeah, I agree. It's like it's a different sort of reality on the other side of this. It sort of changes reality, and there could be sort of just more truth and more clarity as opposed to when these two planets were in Pisces. You know what I was just thinking about too with the energy of the conjunction and how it sort of is moving through time. When they actually come together on February 20th, that resets the cycle. So then they are carrying that, they're still carrying that signature of that 0 degree point. It's such a creation degree that anything that happens there is big. Like, even if it doesn't seem big at the time, it would be big because it's like a stem cell or something, the 0 degree point of Aries. It's just that potent creation degree that it will now grow and evolve over time as well. I don't know. It is sort of interesting the way in which Saturn is somehow restricting Neptune too. Like it's sort of making sure we don't fly higher than our wings can really carry us. So maybe in some ways we kind of only manifest what we've earned here, in these places, in places that we've healed, in places where we've done the work. We can only make dreams concrete that we've dreamt at some point. And I definitely sort of get the sort of ominous way that these two could come together too. I think it's really interesting the way that Neptune especially has those multiple potentials, from sort of unconditional love to deception and being misled. So it's always interesting to try to balance sort of seeing different sides of that signature and how to be open to the highest sides of the signature. There's like the potential for deception and also the potential for achieving your dreams and your fantasies and becoming reality, and it feels like those two things are so completely different, but in some ways they both could end up being true. So different.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Neptune is fascinating that way. I mean, every planet is fascinating and its possible manifestations, but Neptune, the closer you try to examine it, the more diffuse it seems to become. That you articulated it beautifully, just the two sides of that planet and how it can represent our ideals. It embodies our ideals and our dreams, but also our fantasies and things that aren't quite real that we might think are real. And Saturn kind of on Neptune's shoulder, or them walking side by side for a while. It can also, Saturn might create a vehicle for those dreams that have percolated or taken shape during Neptune in Pisces, or that we've just been putting together for ourselves. Over the last few years, Saturn likes structure and boundaries, and it in Aries, it's in the sign of its fall. So planet in its fall is in a place that it's not quite comfortable. It's in the opposite of a sign where it's exalted. So Saturn has set the principles of Saturn as someone who as a planet that creates limits, necessary limits, discipline, boundaries. It's a boundary setter in a sign that wants to move forward sort of with unbridled energy and enthusiasm, or in a microcosm. Even Saturn and Neptune are somewhat opposite in their energies, but Saturn and Aries are also, there's a lot of tension there, right? There's wanting to move forward, but to do so with discipline, and those two impulses don't really go together. But when you mix that all together in as if you're making a cocktail of Saturn and Aries with Neptune and Aries and blending it all together, Saturn could create the vehicle for those dreams, create the reality, the base that we need to layer our aspirations onto. And it could be a beautiful thing. I think that the beginning of this transit will probably not feel that comfortable because of the opposing natures of both the signs and the planets and both planets. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, there could be sort of a moment at first around February 20th that it's a bit uncomfortable, or when the conjunction is more exact, or if you have this in your personal chart, it could be when the planets are interacting with that planet or point, more precisely for you. Yeah, that Neptune could sort of be at its worst maybe in those moments, and maybe Saturn too. Neptune wateriness, and Saturn bringing the discipline around that time, but then it can sort of lift. Yeah, I think, some themes around independence, finding our personal path, maybe taking personal responsibility in a richer way. Themes around leadership being different. It's interesting the way that Aries leads. And maybe Saturn is kind of trying to help Neptune to ground and maybe sort of hold Neptune back from going too fast too, not just flying too high, but going too fast. Sort of making Neptune lay that foundation because, yeah, like you said, like this is the beginning of Neptune in Aries as well. It's not just a Neptune-Saturn conjunction. This is Neptune here in Aries for 15 years. So Saturn's kind of helping Neptune maybe to lay the foundation for what's going to be built in this part of the chart really responsibly. I feel like time could feel a little bit wobbly with this, right? Because I feel like if Saturn is about time and Neptune is wobbly, which I think we could all say Neptune is wobbly, then there could be something just kind of weird about time. We're also crossing from Pisces to Aries here. Yeah, that. I don't know what it would look like, though, in practice.
It's funny you say that because it was one of my notes, and I was about to bring it up about Saturn ruling time. And my note on this reads time speeds up. There's a quickening, but also possible time warps with Saturn and Neptune being together. And we've all had the experience of time seeming to move very quickly or time seeming to move very slowly, especially when we're at work. But and that phenomena, I think that there is truth to that. There will be some time. I feel like time will feel sped up with Saturn and Aries, and Neptune being there. I puzzle over that one, but I find that fascinating that our perception of time can change under this transit. But I do think there'll be a quickening in the spring, or from February on through the spring.
Yes, and maybe even a little extra that quickening could happen when Uranus also moves back into Gemini. And then we'll have everything in the new signs. We'll have Pluto in Aquarius, which I do kind of appreciate the way that Pluto has been holding firm in the new sign. No back to Capricorn for Pluto. But we'll have Pluto in Aquarius and Neptune in Aries and Uranus in Gemini, all for good. They'll all be trining each other really throughout the summer as well. So in terms of that quickening, we could see more of that around then too. Another time to think about is when they were together briefly in 2025, especially because it was at the 0 degree point and they were conjunct there, but not exact. It never went exact, which is crazy, from May through September. So they were within less than a degree in mid-July. So thinking on that sort of individually could give some clues as well. In terms of the collective, it was such a busy summer as well. I feel like there was, we had all of those planets in the new signs. We had Uranus in Gemini. We had Pluto in Aquarius and Neptune in Aries and Saturn in Aries, and they were all working together. And it did sort of feel like there was a little bit of a quickening.
I find it useful with transits to look back on prior manifestations of the transit. Of course, that's impossible with Neptune. None of us were alive when Neptune was last in Aries. It was in the 1860s or so. But Saturn and Aries, to look back on those times. But also, as you mentioned last summer, we had a taste of this transit, right? So thinking about what our summers were like provides some flavor to will become a larger drama or quiet drama or just play. I'm thinking of it in terms of theater. The Act 2 in spring coming to us in the next few months. If you think back on the summer, that's giving you a hint of what might be coming down the pipeline.
Exactly. We may have gotten a bit of a hint of it, and I feel like it might even make more sense later. We might not be able to really understand that until we get a little bit further into the transit, and then you might go, oh, right, because that did connect with this. It might feel a bit loosely connected or metaphorically connected, sort of. But there's some little hint there from the summer, especially if you know your chart and know the part of the chart that Aries rules and what planets are there, it would be worth thinking about what happened there. It might be a good place to keep a bit of an astrology journal, a little note somewhere, even just a note on your phone, sort of that May through September timeline, especially concerning the Aries part of your chart, those early degrees from 2025. It's interesting how they were together a bunch in Pisces. It's like they did the ending together, and now it's time to do the beginning. And like they're helping each other with that. Maybe Saturn is the one helping, but I don't know. Maybe Neptune's the one helping too.
Yeah, and they're certainly doing a dance, a long dance. There are a few different signs, well, at least two different signs.
And it's really interesting for them to be doing this on that part of the zodiac. It's one thing to be crossing from Libra to Scorpio or something, and it's always such a change from one sign to the next. They always have such different energy, but just the end of the zodiac thing in the beginning, I think a lot of people have been looking at this for quite a while, for years, and anticipating this and going, whoa, like you look at the charts for 2026 and they really look so different than what we're used to on the other side of this.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing I really wanted to say about the Pisces time is that there's a significance in terms of the planets shifting from water and earth to fire and air, this element change of all of the planets. Saturn has really been showing the way, sort of as it's been going. Saturn went retrograde into Pisces and then forward. It's sort of interesting the way it's been there throughout the whole process.
Yeah, certainly we saw a major sea change in our culture and our world was AI. Certainly AI has been around for longer than ChatGPT has been around. So ChatGPT debuted in November 2022, I believe. And people who work in artificial intelligence have been working towards that moment for many years, mostly during Neptune and Pisces, though. It's given rise to deep fakes and wrong answers and ambient knowledge that is actually quite useful. It has so many different manifestations. And I think that Neptune going into Aries, take a technological digression, will be a test of how AI has really, we've seen the effects in our lives, in our culture, the beginning of the use of AI-driven weaponry. I think that we will perhaps see a test of that that's in our faces when Neptune is in Aries, how that is really, what are the costs of that and what are the benefits of that? And I think there might be some emphasis on costs at times. And perhaps there'll be a disillusionment with our, AI is fantastic and everyone's using it for this and for that and to write things and to speed their jobs up. And perhaps there might be a little fall from grace in terms of AI's role and be forced into the next stage of its evolution, how we relate to it, both personally and culturally, politically, on all fronts.
Yes. It may really be a reset point, a breakthrough point for all of that when Saturn and Neptune cross in. And if we're talking about the way that it's sort of a whole new reality there, it makes me think about the way in which AI and technology has sort of surprised us. We might not have predicted that it would come for the creative jobs. People had it on their minds that the manufacturing jobs would be affected, and turns out actually things that require a human body are secure, and things that are creative or linguistic are easier to duplicate than we expected. So it's already surprised us, AI, all kinds of things with the technology, and we don't exactly know what will happen next. And so, I wonder if this could be a moment where we go, oh, we were really naive in the past. Back when the way we pictured it before was really, really different. That in the future we'll be feeling that way about it, that it looks really different than what we expected.
there are a few camps around AI. There's a giddiness in some corners. Some people are just, in some professions, it really helps synthesize things that tasks that might have taken a long time to do. And then on the other hand, there's a camp of people who have been just ringing the alarm bells about AI, and perhaps those two axes will be both tamped down a bit. The fear will be lessened because the reality will be clear, and the giddiness will be lessened because the limitations and the dangers will be clear. I think there'll be a realism with Saturn and Neptune. Certainly, it brings about the end of a dream, like Neptune ruling dreams and Saturn ruling reality to an extent. Bringing those together, that's dreams that come down to Earth, so to speak. And certainly AI is one area where that might happen. And you made an important, on a more personal level, you made a great point about what, how, or where in your chart early Aries resides, what house that's in, what planets are there, that the dreams coming down to Earth will happen in that area of our chart. So if it's your fourth house, it might be your home or your family. If it's your 10th house, it might be your workplace, or your reputation, more so your career, your 6th house, health, and your day-to-day work. So where in your chart have there been kind of flights of fancy, or perhaps something that you haven't seen clearly? Saturn Neptune will sort of focus, will bring a focus to that area. You might be some letting go.
True. Knowing where it is in your chart is really important, because we're sort of talking about the collective there in some ways, but knowing where something with that spirit of newness and seeing it really differently, that sort of creative potential, the stem cell, knowing where that is in your chart could be really helpful. And if it's near a planet, it's probably more significant than a house. So we will go through that in just a minute. I was also kind of thinking about pop culture wise, the slang term of 6-7 and how it's very Saturn-Neptune conjunction.
Oh, I don't know that term.
It just sort of means like, who really cares? It's not that precise. We don't have to be exact about things. 6-7, like, who cares? It doesn't really matter. So yeah, it almost sort of is elevating that idea of things don't have to be super concrete. They could be a little loose. Feels very Saturn and Neptune conjunction to me. We've sort of talked quite a bit about this key conjunction here, this main chart that we've been looking at from February 20th. I think it is important, though, to talk about one other thing that we haven't yet, friend, about this exact conjunction on February 20th. I can't believe we've gotten this far without talking about it. But the exact conjunction moment, it's worth noting that does fall during an eclipse window, which just feels like making it even that much more crazy of a moment. There's an eclipse on February 17th and on March 3rd. And so the fact that we have this eclipse in Aquarius on February 17th with Pluto right before this conjunction in Aries, it just feels like it's, we have Neptune entering Aries on January 26th, Saturn into Aries on February 14th, and then we have the eclipse on the 17th, the conjunction on the 20th, and then another eclipse on the 3rd of March. So that just feels extra potent that it's within that window. And I don't think we really need to say, I almost don't know what else there is to say about that, but it just feels that much more of a new era signature, I guess, especially with being Aquarius. It's opening up those Leo Aquarius eclipses. It's the first series of those Leo Aquarius eclipses. And also with Pluto there in Aquarius now, it just kind of feels like is reinforcing that idea that something's happening maybe that week. I do kind of think it's potentially the biggest week of the year astrologically. It's a huge week. And that this is an era shifting time.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. So eclipses can be seasons where shifts are afoot in our lives. They might not be immediately apparent the day of the eclipse. They might be apparent. Sometimes they are, actually. I've had that experience before, but often an eclipse that hits our chart or impacts our chart in a significant way might not become apparent until the weeks after the eclipse, but it certainly reinforces the idea of major shifts going on in our lives and globally as well. So I see astrology often is a game of reinforcement, right? It's like you notice one thing and then you notice another thing that feeds into the first thing and a third thing that feeds into, and then there's a sort of a symbiotic feedback loop going on. And I see that with the ingresses of Saturn and Neptune into Aries, the conjunction, the eclipse, and as we'll talk about in a bit, the new moon in April. So things all reinforce one another. The Aries energy is strong. And that solar eclipse is at 28 Aquarius, which isn't in Aries, but the Aquarius element of that eclipse, the Leo Aquarius axis plays with the idea of the personal versus the collective, right? Personal will and identity versus set against the backdrop of the collective, and how our individual natures are really just part of a collective, and those two things feed off of one another. So that will be a dance that will be going on for people. And if you have Leo and Aquarius planets, certainly that is another play that will be unfolding. And that 28-degree Aquarius point indicates that there's a collective nature to that, perhaps that will bring about a signal of the Saturn Neptune conjunction, but on the collective stage. No, some eclipses pass with nary a blip in your life, and some just don't impact us. Some do. It's worth knowing where this one falls in your chart.
Yeah, it is. It's a quite a potent week. So you should look where Aquarius is, and Aries for sure. Those two parts, and Leo as well across the way, and probably Pisces too, to be thinking about, what could be revealed as those planets come together, as Saturn and Neptune come together in Aries. It could sort of bring something to light, from that cycle that was wrapping up in the Pisces part of the chart. And then with the Aquarius Leo axis being activated now with the eclipses, that would be good to pay attention to too. And we'll definitely take it through in horoscopes as well as we go. But yeah, let's look at that Aries new moon for a second on April 17th. I did just kind of think it was significant because there was just so much going on in Aries at that time that it felt like it could be worth mentioning. I'm not really sure that I've seen the Aries part of the chart, or any part of the chart, quite this loaded. You do see stellium frequently, but this is a little extra, right?
That's a little extra. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 if we include Chiron planets in Aries.
Yeah. And some slow movers, from Saturn and Neptune over on one side of the chart to Chiron over on the other. And then we have, those personal planets and the sun and the moon. I guess it's just Mars in the terms of personal planets. Is Mercury there too? Yeah, Mercury and Mars.
Yes, it is. It's with Neptune. So it is very potent.
It is. It feels like this could be a moment where there's like that true breakout of the new. Potentially like a full bloom or blossoming of the potential of what was started here earlier in the year, around the 20th, maybe whatever event or whatever sort of kicks off then, it could sort of bloom a little bit more, blossom a little bit more around this time of year, around April 17th, when we have this new moon and the 2 weeks and really the months that follow. It's a great new moon. I see there's a lot of positivity here. The sun is exalted in Aries because it enjoys that sort of early spring energy of Aries, and the days getting longer and longer and longer than the nights, and the balance tipping towards the sun. So the sun's exalted, Mars is happy here. it just feels like this could be a moment, maybe sort of a great new moon of 2026, where some of those potentials sort of bloom to another level, maybe that we started to see earlier in the year.
Yeah, I agree. And Venus is in its own sign. Well, it's in Taurus, and which is beautiful. I love when Venus is in Taurus, although it's quite near Uranus, so there's some unexpected things in love, but that's a digression. I would say that this period around the new moon is a time to watch your words, especially when speaking to people close to you, or if harsh words are spoken either to or from you, just to take heart that it is a fairly charged week and time, and that it's useful to be mindful of how we're communicating with each other, with Mercury there, with Mars and Saturn, and so much Aries energy. Aries energy is fantastically, it's fiery and it's pioneering and it's creative, but it can also be combative and divisive at times. So that's something to be aware of during this new moon.
So I like that I like the mindfulness reminder and the slowing down, in terms of saying things or doing things or really anything, just because of the impulsivity of Aries, sort of. So any kind of little pause button that you could maybe try to install around this time, I'm not sure how effective it will be, but yeah, just to take a moment before speaking or acting or going might really be advised, because I think that sometimes that's why Aries can be combative and, difficulties can arise. So often our pause button stops us from that when things are just rushed into and sort of responded to impulsively. It can be difficult or divisive. And so, yeah, with Mars here and Mars and Mercury so close together, watching the words and the impulsivity in general, I like that. That's I was thinking too, not only is Venus in Taurus, which is nice, but Jupiter is still in Cancer.
Yeah, that's really lovely. It's also notable that Pluto is sextiling a lot of those Aries planets. So on the flip side of watching communications and just being mindful of communication, if there is something that people have been gearing up for taking action on, this can be an excellent time. Perhaps not the day of the new moon, which is more of I usually clean on the day of the new moon or do things to clarify. I don't necessarily take action on the new moon day, but around perhaps right after, it's a great time to make your move. Because you have the wind at your back, especially if you have these planets are aspecting your chart in a positive way.
Yeah, I tend to feel the same way, that those actions, once the light has sort of returned a little bit, is a little bit better. Yeah, just the next day or two, it's nice to be a bit reflective during a new moon. We'll be sort of moving a little bit more towards the middle. It's always interesting when the new moon is coming at the end of the sign, like it is now. I always feel like that you almost need it even more. You need to take the new moon time as downtime a little bit more when the new moon falls at the end of the sign, because it's like we've had all that Aries excitement, and then you really kind of need to process before everything shifts over, and then we move into Taurus season.
If you have not yet seen how Saturn Neptune might be unfolding in your life, I see this as just like a forceful, hey, here we are kind of new moon. This is the theme. There's something you can't ignore, right, about this, and there's going to be something you can't ignore with Saturn and Neptune and Aries, and this is sort of the flashpoint of like, it's in front of your face. Here it is.
1,000%. It just sort of going to another level, like the way they say that like your destiny will sort of whisper and then it gets louder and louder the more you ignore it. Like you'll get like a little hint of what you're supposed to do, and it just the messages sort of get louder and louder. And this could be a moment where if you haven't gotten the message yet, if you haven't sort of started the new thing or whatever it is, it could really come together. It is interesting the way that sextile from Pluto too is really the only aspect, other than, of course, the the huge pileup in Aries and the conjunctions there that self. It's like they're just getting this little boost of energy over from Pluto, just kind of making sure, just in case it needed one more little boost of energy.
Yeah, it's almost like a nuclear energy cell, just sort of like energizing everything that it's fixed. It's like the socket that everything's plugged into.
Yeah, it is a really intense little sextile. Okay, yeah, so we're looking forward to that new moon for sure. I wanted to just talk incredibly briefly, almost just a mention of this next chart here, which is from August 31st, 2025. And this is the moment that the Jupiter-Saturn trine is finally exact. So Jupiter and Saturn were very, very close to perfecting this trine in 2025, but they never did. And so it's not until here, August 31st, and really throughout the summer, it's within orb of 2026. And now we have them coming into the trine with Saturn in Aries and Jupiter over in Leo. So we have everything in fire signs. And I just think this is interesting because it's sort of just the beginning of Saturn pulling away from Neptune just a little. After all of those years, Saturn is just beginning finally to pull away from Neptune. They've been together in Aries for a while. They've been back and forth over the Aries-Pisces threshold. They were together in late 2023 in Pisces. And now Saturn is beginning to pull away, and it pulls into this really intense, powerful configuration where it's pulling into that trine with Jupiter. So it just feels like another sign, another indication that we are in a new timeline, a new future, something that was seeded perhaps in 2020 when Jupiter and Saturn were conjunct. Now they're in the first trine, so sort of some things that maybe began at that time can now get off the ground in earnest in a different way. This is happening in fire signs as well, so it's kind of giving me that energy of starting and going and movement and action and opportunity and confidence and bravery. And it just feels significant that just as sort of the conjunction begins to break up, this is happening here. So I just at least wanted to mention it. I think it might be the second biggest transit of the year.
Yeah, it's incredibly constructive, Saturn, Jupiter, trines, and in fire. It's just, that was the image I had. You just mentioned, I think, getting going, or I had an image of like you've loaded up the wagon and it's sort of taking off now. Or there could be tests in the spring when Saturn and Neptune first go into Aries, letting go, or I've mentioned, it's like a broken record talking about dreams being brought down to reality. We sort of know, we've seen how this might play out. We see how we've had our courage tested perhaps with Saturn and Aries, our confidence tested. We have reorganized ourselves somewhat around what this transit means for us. And now Jupiter is trining Saturn, or they're trining each other, and they're providing sort of expansion for that new idea, that new shift, that what we've resolved we need to do moving forward. Jupiter gives us just that shot of its expansiveness, confidence, a little bit of good juju sprinkled over the top. It's a benefic. It tends to bring some luck or some good things with it, and expansion certainly. So it just seems like it provides the vehicle for moving forward with something that might have seemed difficult a few months earlier when Saturn and Neptune first went to Aries. So, it's like a really lovely, it's just lovely after some challenging transits earlier in the year.
Yeah, it is. It is. I love that word, productive, that it's productive. It's very capable. I also wanted to mention that people who have this conjunction in their natal chart, so there was a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in 1989 in Capricorn, in 1952 and 53 in Libra, and in 1917 in Leo. If anyone has that in their chart and would like to share in the comments how this has shown up for you, we would love to hear about it. Some stories about how that has sort of personally manifested for you. And it might be worth thinking about how some of the things that we've talked about here, you sort of carry the signature yourself a little bit, breaking molds, stepping into new realities. Capricorn, it's about doing things differently, maybe in terms of systems, sort of earthly things, taking responsibility in different ways. If you have it in Libra in 52 and 53, it could be about finding your own way in relationships, with others and with yourself, and also just noting where it is in your chart. I think the conjunction, the co-presence here will sort of ignite this signature, sort of activate it. So thinking about how it's shown up for you until now could be helpful. And that could all sort of go to a little bit of another level now, another sort of, this would be a major activation of that natal conjunction for sure. And then the only other thing I thought we really should discuss is those different, if it's working with your different personal planets. If it's working with Neptune, your natal Neptune, or Pluto, or one of the outer planets, it's more of a generational or a collective impact. But it feels like the Sun, Mercury, Venus, the Moon, the Ascendant, all of these points might be worth mentioning. Let's run through them. Okay, so if it is working with your Sun.
So the Sun is our core identity. And if we think about Sun, Moon, and Rising, I know I'm jumping forward, but I'll jump back again.
Hi.
So the Sun, sometimes people identify more with their Sun than their rising sign, or vice versa. I see the rising sign as what we cloak ourselves in. Our Sun is really our core, it's our heart, it's who we are, really at our foundation. And so a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, in close aspect to our Sun, there might be some new ideas emerging about who we are. There also might be some letting go of ideas about who we are, and just some forced emergence of our ideals and our sense of self.
Some sort of redefinition of identity or expression of yourself in a new way. A potential anyway to sort of reinvent or have a fresh start for all of that, especially with, an Aries Sun sort of has the potential to do that anyway, to start new, to reinvent. And so this signature going over it could sort of, exactly, redefine identity or life direction in some way. Probably in a somewhat powerful or significant way. This would be a pretty significant transit to a Aries Sun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the Moon, I agree, it's sort of bringing it down a little bit more, or you were saying ascendant in terms of the way you sort of are presented to the world, the way you present to the world, like your expression into the world. So a reset around how you meet the world and probably how the world meets you too. Maybe stepping into sort of a new, updated, more authentic version of yourself and presentation of that version in some way. Your personal narrative could change in some way, really with the Sun or the Ascendant. I would say that could shift your just the way you're seeing your story a little bit or something. What do you think with Ascendant?
Yeah, I think also the body and your appearance. As you mentioned, how you're projected into the world. That is appearance, how we, what we wear, our face, so to speak, in both a literal and metaphorical way, and our bodies, of course, are ruled by the Ascendant.
Yeah, they could be really interesting because in a way with the Saturn, I could think, it could be like a maturing of your appearance. But then Neptune, you could do any kind of far out fun thing. So who knows? But yes, a reset in that sense could manifest in all kinds of different ways in terms of your body sort of not from a health perspective, but from a just your physical expression in the world perspective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the moon feels like potential for emotional breakthroughs. Yeah, I always think with Aries moon anyway, that Aries moon people are sort of comfortable to lead the way emotionally. Like they'll often be the first person in a room to cry about something or to get angry about something. And it sort of gives other people permission to be that way too. So that signature could just sort of be ignited or mature or change in some kind of way. I mean, any kind of long-standing emotional pattern could change, could mature, or be, you could sort of elevate the emotional side of your life in some way with a transit like this, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. And also, there could be changes in our relationships with our mothers, the moon just literally ruling our mothers. So our early Aries moons, yeah, they might experience that change in their relationship.
You're right. That's a good point with the moon. That could be a part of it too, or even just like mothering themes in general, your own mothering, if you're a mother, your children potentially from that reason. All right. How about some of these personal planets? What do you think about Mercury, Venus, and Mars, Corin?
So Mercury, Mercury rules the way we think and communicate. And Saturn, Neptune, moving over that, well, a Mercury in Aries would be someone who doesn't necessarily hold back when they express what they are thinking or want to say. Mercury in Aries is, Aries just moves forward. So Mercury in Aries moves forward with speech and is very vibrant and vigorous in their communication style. So Saturn, Neptune, they're kind of, if I think on that, I feel like there could be a reordering of how you're communicating in one part of your life. Think about the moon sometimes rules our emotions, but Mercury can rule how we express our emotions, right? So if we're angry, our Mercury shows how we're expressing that anger. And I'd imagine if there are some things that if there's unexpressed anger in someone's life, Saturn, Neptune moving over, and they have Mercury in Aries, that could trigger an expression of that anger or a realization of a place where you really need to let the valve out a bit if it's been sort of clogged up. Well, with a Mercury in Aries, you're really not clogging up your valve, but there just might be expressions of intense emotion.
Maybe it's more discernment.
Discernment as well. I mean, Saturn does provide discernment as well. And perhaps it's an interesting one to ponder. What do you think about Mercury with Saturn Aries or Saturn Neptune?
So many different things with Mercury. It's so true, but some sort of shift in how we think or communicate makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I guess a potential maturing or leveling up of that process. So if you have Mercury in Aries who struggles sometimes speaking too quickly or maybe in ways that could be more destructive than constructive, it might help to bring some discernment to that. And if maybe you need to express yourself a little bit more and realize that Aries, that Mercury in Aries signature of, expressing your own unique views, this Saturn and Neptune could help you to do it.
Yes, I agree.
Some sort of leveling up of the Mercury and Aries signature. And I mean, I guess it's the same really for Venus, but just in terms of relationships or finances potentially, or some sort of aesthetic signature, sort of leveling it all up, deeper connections with people, more spiritually aligned connections perhaps. I feel like Venus could be more comfortable in Aries, but maybe this transit will help. Venus in Aries is so unique and sort of doing things its own way. But yeah, Venus could be happier. So maybe this sign will sort of help a Venus and Aries person to come into a different level of relationships or aesthetics or finances in a way like more comfortable blazing your own trail, having your own unique perspective, Yeah, having connections that feel more right for you now in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding what's truly right for you now. Illusions about those things could dissolve, about people or about finances or status.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, illusions dissolving is such a key signature of this conjunction. Venus and Aries, I feel like Venus and Aries people, we're talking specifically about early Aries, but Venus and Aries in general, they tend to go for what they want. I know quite a few Venus and Aries people, and they're quite, their pursuit of love interest can be unbridled or just it's very direct, right? And sometimes impulsive. And so I also think of Venus very closely aligned with our art, with artists. Of course, Venus ruling art and beauty, but certainly see Venus prominent in the chart of people who work in the arts. And Saturn and Neptune aspecting an Aries Venus could really give rise to some beautiful new forms of art if that is something that's in your life. Could be a great time to conceive of new directions. Those might just kind of hit you over the head a little bit. You wake up, with a new vision of something that you hadn't thought of before, or providing structure for some kind of art forms that have been percolating for you without much of a vehicle to get them out. That Saturn Neptune might provide the structure to create.
I love
in new
that.
ways. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Mars as well, right? Some sort of potential being realized potentially. Sort of recalibrating maybe your drive or your motivation in some way, maybe how you assert yourself, especially with Mars and Aries. There could be a reset to the way you assert yourself, the way you sort of move through the world in some way. The blooming of some real potential here, though, because I think Mars would love this. Mars would love for Saturn and Neptune to come interact with the signature, Mars and Aries, and sort of have a maturing to the drive or the motivation in some way, an expansion.
Yeah, a tempering as well. The word tempering sprung to mind. A tempering of that very strong Mars and Aries will and action, urge to action, which Mars and Aries is fantastically driven. So just a tempering of like the direction in which that drive goes. I don't know necessarily that this transit would feel comfortable for Mars and Aries, but that doesn't mean it can't be very productive. And tension often gives rise to great things, right? So there's the fundamental tension of this conjunction. For Mars and Aries might feel like a little bit, just like a little uncomfortable at first, but can really, if you dive into or work with the transit, can perhaps send you in a new direction or redefine your will, temper your will in constructive ways.
Yeah, that's a good reminder that I think that all of these transits, when it would actually be exact with your chart, could be a difficult moment, whether it's Saturn or Neptune. It could come in a little harsh, but I mean, as with everything in astrology, it's helpful to remember how this stuff is ultimately bringing you, somewhere new, somewhere better, somewhere that is where you're going to learn new things, the next sort of level of experience in life, and nothing is really working against us. So I always think it can be helpful when you see a transit like this, and then if you have a hiccup or even something that feels like a little bit more of a hiccup, to sort of trust and know that it's part of a cycle, and that as that exact conjunction starts to fade away and you sort of incorporate it into your experience, and always we want to be doing everything we can on our side to make our lives better, to move things in the direction we want to move them in, that the astrology can come in to support that. That sometimes that moment that the tea kettle boils is a little intense, but then you just have hot water to work with. And, there's some real potential with this particular hot water, for sure, for good stuff. Oh, you're such a great astrologer, my friend.
Oh goodness.
share how people can find you if they'd be interested in
Sure.
working with you more, which they should, because you're so good and wonderful.
Thank you, Gina. They can find. Can I say one last thing on
Neptune? Please.
Sorry. Neptune. I know. I feel like I've been avoiding Saturn a little bit. I'm just talking about Neptune. I'm like the Neptune booster today. But there's two things I wanted to mention that were in my notes that I think are worth mentioning. And one is that when Neptune was last in Aries in the 1860s and 1870s. The Red Cross came into being, which I think is a perfect embodiment of Neptune and Aries energy. It's like forceful care, right? So the moon can will care, but Neptune can as well. It's more like nursing, and the Red Cross is just as a symbol, just the actual logo, but also what the Red Cross has, how the conception of the Red Cross and why it was created is just an embodiment of that. And I thought that was worth noting. And the other thing about Neptune is that whenever I'm talking about Neptune or to read a chart where Neptune is prominent, I pay attention to serendipities right before that moment. This morning I saw a TikTok of a couple in the water. I think they were in the Caribbean island, but they're in waist-deep water. So Neptune, right? Neptune rules the large bodies of water. And the song, the woman, the wife, is singing to her spouse, but he's deaf, so she's signing the song Beyonce's Drunk in Love, which is all about sort of losing yourself in love and being intoxicated with love. And she's signing it behind him, and they're both looking to the camera, and he just looks so in love, and she looks so in love. It is so moving. And I thought that it was, and it went viral as well. I think it had 500,000 likes or so. But it seemed to me like an embodiment of this, that they're in this medium, Neptune, this amorphous sort of ambient medium, but they're bringing love and intensity through gesture and form and effort. Signing something takes effort. It's creating meaning out of something amorphous like love and the ocean. It's bringing it into being. I don't know if I'm just rambling here, but for me, instinctively, it really felt like a Neptune and Aries meets Saturn and Aries moment, or video, or embodiment of that. So
it does. It does. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love those two things. They were perfect. Thank you for sharing them.
Okay, thank you. And people can find, if they'd like to find me, I'm at planetarybased.com, and like plant-based, but instead it's planetarybased.com. And in January, I've been working quite a while on a system of visualizing charts that goes beyond the wheel that we're all familiar with. It has to do with some spirals and curves and forms. So I'll be debuting that in January. And you can find them there. And you can find me there.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. And I hope that we can also do some videos together in the future, some other collaborations. And we also have a video series together on my channel where we go through the 12 signs of the zodiac, and we just go over each of the archetypes, and we talk about light sides of the signatures and shadow sides of the signatures. And I think that, we all have different signs that we need to know more and more. If you've gotten this far in the recording, you are a student of astrology for sure. And we all have some signs that we know better than others. And it can just be helpful to listen to those conversations, not just for your own sign, but just as you're learning about these different signatures. Aries, for example, connected to some of these things we've discussed, or Aquarius as the nodes are shifting into Aquarius and Leo. And then even in terms of your own sign, where your sun, moon, and rising are, those are great videos to watch, because I always find it helpful. I sort of try to stay on the light side of my signatures of my sun, moon, and rising. And when I notice myself slipping into one of those more shadow behaviors, maybe being a little impulsive with the Aries side, or a little too much of a pleaser with the Libra side, or a little too dreamy or escapist with my Pisces side, it helps me to move towards those light signatures to understand sort of the multiple potentials. So I would recommend watching those too if you've enjoyed this video. And I just hope that everyone has an amazing Saturn and Neptune and Aries. I hope you will come back again sometime soon, Corinne.
Oh, well, thank you, Gina. I always love talking astrology with you. We can get lost down the rabbit hole, and it's fun to do it in a way that we can share with others. You're so talented and insightful, so I really am honored to be here, and thank you. I'd love to come back at some point in the future.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.